Okay, so who is Mr. Leo over here, our speaker? He. Okay, they say that curiosity kills a cat, but a cat has 9 lives. Okay, but however, he has actually defied the odds. Okay, not once, not twice, okay, but 3 times. Okay, he had 3 near-death flying accidents, and with the remaining 6 lives to spare, okay, right now he is living his remaining life to tell his tales of his very interesting, adventurous journey. Okay, so from all the way, okay, from the skies to the blockchain, okay, his career above fear, okay, soared above fear and beyond limits. Okay, building the Singapore Air Force helicopters into a credible and resilient force. Okay, so he has also his own collection of NFTs with a Pilot Leo tokens. Okay, so without further ado, okay, can I invite Mr. Leo from behind all the way? Round of applause, okay, to start this session going. Mr. Leo, please.
I'd like to share with you credible moments of my life in the Air Force. Can you recognize this uniform I'm wearing? Okay, who can recognize it? Can you raise your right hand? Wonderful. Wow, our young men down there, our young heroes here can recognize. Wow, a lot of young heroes can recognize. Okay. Can you tell me when you have seen this uniform? Anyone? Okay, way back in National Day 2019, when the last column, mobile column, moving past the City Hall, carried the pioneers of Singapore. The pioneers from the Air Force, the pioneers from the Navy, pioneers from the Army, pioneers from the Singapore Defence Force, what it used to be called the Singapore Fire Brigade, pioneers from the Singapore Police Force, and more. So this was a uniform with pioneers from the Air Force contingent war. It's a combination of 3 generations in this uniform. We used to start off with green uniform, then we changed to light blue, like this blue, and then light blue, and then to the present day blue. And also in terms of rank structure, we changed. This was our original rank structure. Then we changed and changed, modernized. And the pilot wings also, you don't see this pilot wing anymore, the embroidered pilot wing. This was first generation. And on it is engraved SAF. It's not RSAF, it's SAF. Stands for Singapore Armed Forces. Because at that time when we set up the Air Force, it was an Air Defence Command of the Singapore Armed Forces, before it became known as the Republic of Singapore Air Force in 1975. All right, so let's hear some stories of the time we have changed from those days. Today's topic: soared above fear and beyond limits. How a kampong boy's flying dream took flight. So the young man down here dream, okay, you'll be able to fly with the eagle one day. Command eagle, steer the eagle to where you want and achieve your dream. Alright, are you ready to fly? Okay, all ready to fly? Everybody? Okay, let's go. Now, this particular one. Watch the building, watch the aircraft. I want to ask you some questions. How many of you can recognize this event? Raise your right hand. National Day. Oh, good, wonderful National Day. Which year was it? It's a harder question now. Which year was it?
This year.
Look at the building carefully. Oh, correct, 2023, that boy, wow. Our young hero knows history well. Thank you very much, you will do well in school. Super, remember history. Later on, I tell you where to read. There's a book to read, you must read, okay? I tell you page 142, remember. I show you the page 142 later. Okay? Remind me. Okay, this was National Day Parade held in 2023. Where was it held? Anybody knows? Got it? Anyone? 2023? Okay. No. Padang. Wherever it is still in Singapore. Correct answer. Answers are correct. Flew over our country. But to get to those cockpits is a long and difficult journey for those pilots to get into the cockpits to fly, especially at the National Day Parade, where the show is not only nationwide but worldwide. The whole world is watching Singapore. How you fare, how strong your defense is, how confident we are as Singaporeans. I'm speaking as a pure Singaporean. Although I've had 3 different citizenship. I was a British subject when I was born. Then I was a Malaysian citizen when Singapore was part of Malaysia. And then finally, I am where I am now, a true Singaporean since 1965. We are all in the same boat, and we all aspire for the same dream. So here, we'll share this story, how a kampong boy became a pilot in pursuing his dream. Way back in Sembawang, do you recognize this place, Sembawang? Yeah. Northern part of Singapore. That's where this little boy, at 7 years old, his first day at school. He was going to a Chinese school. His father sent him to Chinese school, 1年级. Then he studied 2年级 in Chinese school. Then 3年级, the father got smart. His father said English is the language of the future. So he enrolled him into an English school, and the school assessed his ability and put him straight into primary 2, P2 in English. But in the morning, he was studying Chinese, primary 3. So that year was a very tough year for this little boy. So he was quite stunned, rightly quite stunned on the first day of school. So this boy grew up in the Sembawang area, very remote area, very different from what Sembawang is today. And in those days, his parents worked as domestic servants in the families of British naval officers. As you can see in the picture on the right, the boy is circled down there, and his father and mother were on the right. They work as domestic servants. The mother ironed clothes, washed the house, cleaned the laundry. The father was a domestic cook, cooking 1, 2, 3, 4 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, afternoon high tea, and dinner. So it's a round the clock type of duty until 9 p.m. before he can leave the household. But fortunately, they have a servants' quarter to stay at those black and white bungalow. You can see in Sembawang at the back. And in tow were his children, the young boy and 3 younger sisters. That young boy was me. Those 3 sisters are my younger sisters. And we led a very tough, humble life as a child, as children. For example, our parents' salary hardly met our expectation, living expenses. For example, towards the last week of the month, we run out of money to have a good meal. So usually on the last 4 days of the month, our lunch and dinner were purely steamed rice with black soya sauce, with taoyu. That's as good as it gets. Sometimes we may have some leftover kiam he, saltfish, to add the taste. And the other thing is, you will see in this picture, on the extreme right and extreme left are the 2 children whom the ama, there's also an additional servant, ama, look after the child. So on this occasion, we were quite good. This master of the home, we call them masters, is colonial way of the addressing. The master of the house, the mistress is called Missy, and then I follow the parents, we call them master, Missy, and even these children are called Misses, So our masters, employers, were generally quite all right because they are officers, they were quite well cultured. And at this picture, he asked us to gather for a Christmas photograph. And we dressed in our very, very best. Our very best, my very best was my school uniform. We did not have other colorful clothes and fashion to go with. How would you like to take a picture of your color uniform, your school uniform? Good, you look great. So that was the best. Secondly, we were stuck in this so-called poverty trap. We felt that my grandfather, who migrated from China, went to Malaya, Pahang, worked as a domestic cook. My father was also a domestic cook all his life. Then I looked at him, will I also be a domestic cook and be stuck in a poverty trap? I said no. The world is different. I'm able to go to school. We will change it. We will escape from the poverty trap. So that set us on a journey, which I'll share with you shortly. The other thing is, I could not get out of the poverty trap well because I was academically average. Most of my subjects I could pass, but could not excel. There was no distinction. So I lugger on, and in those days, the 1960s were the turbulent periods in Southeast Asia. You may know that one of the bigger issues was the raging war in Vietnam. The communists advanced to try and take South Vietnam, and there was also a worry that the communism may come to Singapore. Secondly, with the formation of Malaysia in 1963, Indonesia objected to it and followed a policy called confrontation. Confrontation against against Malaysia, the Federation of Malaysia, which Singapore was a member state. So we faced confrontation at that time. Indonesians sent two Marines into Singapore and bombed McDonald House, killed 2 persons. How many of you can remember? Can you raise your right hand? That incident? That we remember well. There's a memorial in Orchard Road on that, all right? I see. So the children are learning well. The history books in your schools are wonderful. They're doing a good job. You all are doing a good job. Secondly, they were also Indonesian paratrooped into Kota Tinggi in Johor nearby, where we had a Singapore regiment patrolling the area. And I think it's 33 of them, a platoon of them were massacred by the Indonesian paratroopers at the Kota Tinggi waterfall. So those are the type of costs we bore Singapore in the environment of those days. And the bigger threat, long-term threat we faced was the raging Vietnam War is marching southwards. And there was a domino theory that says when one communist country falls, the neighboring country, like domino in a row, will fall. So this became a big issue, security issue in Southeast Asia. But in the midst of all this turbulence, Singapore was born, reluctantly born, ejected out from the Federation of Malaysia in August 1965. Faced with this, Singapore had big issues. National defense became our issue because as part of Malaysia, the federal government looked after our air defense. Our national defense of Malaysia as a whole, which includes Singapore. The British armed forces were here. The Air Force were here to provide big umbrella, air cover for Singapore and Malaysia. So the other thing is economic development. And finally, last but not least, social cohesion. How many of you can remember the riots of 1964? Raise your right hand. Not many. I lived through the riots. Fortunately, I was safe. I was not injured. Because in the area where we live in Kampong, in the British naval base, there was quite a good security naval base police patrols around there. I remember that very well and do not want to face such issue again. So as a young boy, I used to see these aircraft flying around. British Air Force aircraft. The helicopters without wings. The big Argosy transport aircraft, giant aircraft with wings. And I admire them, and I like the sound, like the size, which impressed me. But in school, I learned about Newton's law on gravity. Things heavier than Earth must fall to Earth because of gravitation pull. But I was wondering, how come this aircraft so large, so heavy, they can fly in the air and still stay in the air? Why don't they fall to the ground? So I set my curiosity into action and went on a dream to find the answer, to seek the answer to that question. Why do aircraft heavier than air do not fall to Earth? So what I did was, I aspired to fly. Aspire. Look at the word aspire. I'll explain it later. There's a meaning to the word aspire. Aspire, not expire. Aspire. Want to be. So I wanted to fly. I imagined I was Akaras, the boy, the Greek mythology about a boy who wanted to fly, and he had wings fixed to his arm. And eventually he fell off the sky. And during that time, what I did was, I had an opportunity. There was an airline called Malaysian Singapore Airlines, if you remember. It was before they split into Singapore Airlines and Malaysian Airways system after Singapore left the Federation of Malaysia. I applied for the pilot job. I got through all the aptitude tests. Remember, I was trying to be a pilot. I got the last stage, passed the first interview, passed the second interview. I said, oh, my dream is coming true. But then after the third interview, they politely wrote me a letter. I am sorry to inform you, sir, that your application to be a pilot is not successful. No reasons explained, no explanation why. But that strengthened my resolve even further. Airline don't want me? Could there be something else that want me? Then we got this good news to me, but it was bad news for Singapore. 1968, the British government announced that it would withdraw all its armed forces from east of Suez Canal. That means from Malaya, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong by 1971. And that means in 3 years, by 1971, Singapore will be topless. What is topless? Anyone can give a suggestion? That means Singapore will not have a top cover of fighter aircraft and air defense. Singapore's top will be exposed to any sort of air threats. Okay? So, in 1968, fortunately, the army was really starting to form. We had national service for the army. We started forming part of the Navy, the Maritime Command. And in those periods, we had these two things online. But there was no Air Force. We were really worried. Singapore was really worried. But to me, it was an golden opportunity to me. The top priority then was to build the Air Force. The Ministry of Interior and Defense, the big predecessor of the Singapore MINDEF today, set a target and put top priority to recruiting people, to buying equipment and building capability for the Air Force to define ourselves with air defense as the top priority. But we had no air talent. We had no talent, no piloting talent, despite some pilots who are serving the airlines, but they will not switch over to the Air Force in any way. The Singapore Airline was growing. At that time, it was still MSA, still growing. The only talent we had, thank goodness, we had a pool of technicians, Singaporeans who served in the British Royal Air Force, Malaya. Royal Air Force bracket Malaya. They were servicing the British aircraft, military aircraft in Changi Air Base, Changi Station, Seletar Station, Tengah Station. They serviced the Lightning fighters, the transport aircraft, the helicopters. So we had a small pool of technicians readily who joined the Singapore Air Defense Command that was set up and went for training conversion. But there was no pilot. There was no budget also set aside. This is a surprise event. There was no Air Force equipment whatsoever. So what the Ministry of Interior and Defense did was they quickly went out to recruit for pilot trainees. And in the advertisement, it drew tremendous response from youngsters, young men who want to be Air Force military pilots. And this was the situation in the Central Manpower Base at Kallang in those days. People who wanted to be Air Force pilot applied for the job. I applied, and I was shortlisted to be further shortlisted. After 3 or 4 days of grueling medical checkups, grueling aptitude tests, and grueling measurement of our ability to react to different situations, we finally got in as an Air Force pilot cadet. Thank you very much. But I big challenge, my dear mother say, son, flying is dangerous. You may get killed. Don't go to be an Air Force pilot. I said, mother, okay, I got to obey my mother. Very filial boy, see? So I can listen to mother. But that father at the back heard. What did he say? He said, son, go and chase your ambition. You will pioneer the Air Force. Go, son. So I said, thank you very much, father. Here I go. Mommy, sorry, father override your decision. She's the commander of the household, and he commands me. So I go. So I went, and my mother was very sad, her tears in her eyes, and said, okay, go and chase your dream. My father wished me well and sent me to chase my dream. In those days, this was the first batch of pilot trainees here. 32 pilot trainees, I was among them. Shortlisted, chosen from several thousand applicants for the post. I was a very fat boy. I couldn't run. So BMT was a terrible time for me. For example, I couldn't climb the familiar 5-foot wall. I used to bash flag to the wall. Secondly, I couldn't climb the 10-foot rope to the top and touch the bar. But it pushed me on. I still want to pursue my dream, and I managed to pass BMT, which was compressed into 2 months because time was very short. The moment you clear BMT, we were sent to do air grading, to check whether we have the aptitude to pilot aircraft and orientate ourselves in the air. So I went there, and this was Colonel Foster, loaned from the Royal Air Force. Britain was very helpful. They loaned us instructors to do air grading for us. He was one, there was two other senior officers, and he was the person, Major Foster, with the aircraft that doesn't belong to Singapore Air Force. Can anyone guess where the aircraft came from? Right on, Singapore Flying Club, Cessna 172. The government rented 2 aircraft from Singapore Flying Club, civilian aircraft, to allow these instructors to do air grading for us. And we flew that for about 15-20 hours to be eligible and pass the air grading test, air grading phase. Of course, there were 40-50% of those, 32 did not make it. So they were channeled to other vocations which were heavily in demand, such as air traffic controller, air defense controller, radar operators, and so on. And on 11 November 1968, I was among the 4 pilot trainees from this batch chosen to fly helicopters. The other 6 in the picture are a mix of former technicians who left RAF Malaya and joined the Singapore Air Defence Command, and 1 or 2 of them came directly from the civilian world. We went to France, and in France, we were sent to 4 different places. For example, for the pilots, we were sent, first of all, to a most difficult phase. The first phase, learning French language at Vichy for 2 months. Who can speak French here? Raise your right hand. Parlez-vous français? Ah, très bien, très bien. So I can tell you, for you it's easy. For me, it's terrible. I had to learn so many ways of addressing people, so many ways a work can take place, and so on. Worse, the big challenge was we are dumped into the center of France in November, thick winter, snow-covered place in a hotel with no contacts, and we had to look, find our food, and find our place to the language center. But we press on. Allons-y, right? So we pressed on. In 2 months, we will say, okay, you cannot stay any more longer. You have to go to flying school now. And that was where number 2 place. We were sent to a place called Dax. Because the flying school, run by the French Army Aviation, who dominate the helicopter force in the French armed forces, had courses already planned out in a year. And we were slotted in that particular course that was supposed to start in January 1969. So we were shot out from there to Paris, and then take train all the way to Dax, and we reported for duty. Among us 4, there were also something like 12 French officers who were also pilot trainees. They're commissioned officers, but they took up training. So we had a lot of French connection during those days. But I'll cover a bit more there. Later on, after we graduated from the flying school and achieved our pilot's wings, we went to Mulhouse, where we got converted to Alouette 3 helicopter that Singapore had bought with the frontline unit there. And finally, before we came home, we went to the factory to be licensed and qualified with a civilian certification as a captain of the Alouette 3 helicopter. So what we did was, language was a terrible experience, was very difficult. We used to repeat and repeat like parrots, and then finally got out to flying school. One of the things we learned was this word lap. Okay, lap is a tree, correct? I've not forgotten much. I forgot much of the French language. Lap is a tree. Lap, okay. So we went to school, flying school, and among them we had a lot of French officers. These are the 2 Singaporeans here. These are the French officers, very experienced, more senior and older than us. So we learned from them. We learned French. And here, me and my other colleague, Peter Teo, myself, and that's where aspire comes in. Aspirant spells aspirant, which means aspire to be, right? You want to be. So that's a rank given to officer cadets. Okay, aspire to be officers. And here was the basic phase. The basic phase was 60 hours flying the old Korean War Bell 47 helicopter, piston engine aircraft. as you see here. It was very challenging because we had not had not a good command of the English language yet, and everything was in French. The textbooks were in French, the language instruction was in French, the air traffic control instruction was all in French. They were frightened of us. They said, we will not let you fly solo in case you cannot understand the air traffic instructions and cannot find your way back. So we persisted and persisted, but there was one good thing, because NATO was quite dominant in Europe at that time, 1969. And every Friday, the language of air traffic control was switched to English. And we flew, we had a wonderful day, and that's the time they sent us solo, flying solo. So in this particular phase, we flew 60 hours. We flew solo as well on the helicopter, and that's where we learned from a textbook. It's in French. I bought an English to French dictionary and translated every word, almost every word in the textbook to English, and that's how I studied my ground subjects in English. And I realized that the tree is not a tree in technology. It's a shaft, an engine shaft, and a transmission shaft from wood to metal. Wow, what a shock we had with the language. But we still push on. We still push on and went on to the advanced phase. Another 60 hours of instruction on the jet engine, turbine engine, Elevate 2 helicopter. Elevate 2 helicopter is the one step before our Elevate 3 helicopter that we bought. And in this phase, there was a big challenge again. We had a lot of incidents and so on, and one of the more prominent one was this one. We were learning mountain flying at the Pyrenees Mountain in 1969, 10,000 feet above sea level. Let's watch what happened. This was the final stage of training.
Shattering the silence of
1
the
week
tower
before
noise,
graduation.
the rhythmic thudding of a helicopter slices through the air. On board, an experienced instructor pilot teaches his student the skills of landing on the rugged terrain of the majestic peaks. The pilot cautiously approaches the tiny landing pad, aiming to touch down before its rocky edge. He misjudges and overshoots the spot. The helicopter tethers precariously at the edge. The pilot fights hard to control the chopper, but it falls off the edge and plummets into the deep valley. The thin line between mastery and disaster blurs as the helicopter falls into the depth of this valley.
That is fear. That is fear. That was the sound I almost heard. As I fell with my instructor down, nose down, and he tried to fight for control of the aircraft, nose down. Lean forward, all of you, try and lean forward, look at the ground. Come lean forward. Imagine you're coming round the ground, crashing. What comes into your mind? What comes in my ooh, eh. But to me, my mother said, son, flying is dangerous. You may get killed in a crash. I said, yeah, my mother is telling me the truth. It's coming around. I'm going to get killed. I can't go back and see my mommy. That was in my mind. Wow. In my mind. And we fell from 10,000 feet, 7,000, 8,000, 7,000, 6,000 before the instructor managed to gain control of the aircraft and leveled at about 4,000 feet. Wow. We fell 6,000 feet, and luckily there were no other rocks. It was a vertical cliff that we fell down. Wow. And wow. We leveled off. The instructor came up and said, "Oh God, let's go back to base. No more flying today." His voice was shivering. My mind was, my mother tell me, what did my mother tell me? And I said, why did my father send me here? Why did my father send me here? But I said, mission is still ahead. I want to chase my dream and achieve my dream. Push on. Next day, we continue. We regain confidence in ourselves, our ability, we rethink what happened, and we continue. And eventually, we graduated 1 week later. The equal among the French officers. These 4 Singaporeans who can't speak French from the beginning, after some 10 months there, managed to graduate alongside the French, with the French army officers. And this was the wing that we got awarded. French Army Observer Pilot Course wing. Which is French Army Pilot and Forward Air Controller Qualification Badge. There are only 5 of these in Singapore. 4 from the batch that we were graduated from, and the following year, one more pilot from Singapore was sent there for training. So only 5, and each has a serial number. 827, my number is 827. Okay, 5 APO, 827, 5 or 3. So we came back. And what was important here is I'd like to share with you. Look at this verse. Soar above fear, beyond limits and beyond limits. Pursue your goals. Align your mindset with your goals and keep on pursuing it. We have dreams and we want to achieve it. Eventually, 2 months later, I came back to Singapore in January 1970 and joined the operational squadron, Squadron at Paya Lebar Air Base. Finally, I achieved my dream to be a pilot. The little kampong boy who saw birds, aircraft flying in the sky, took something like 8 years to achieve that dream. But ahead of it lay more challenges. One of the challenges was this one. How many can remember this view? Can you raise your right hand? Okay, let's have a look at it.
In the formation of Elevator 3 helicopter flying the national flag, the stars symbolizing democracy, equality, justice, peace and tolerance, and the crescent, symbol of a rising young nation. PAC strike markers எனப்படும் விமானங்களை வரவேற்கின்றன. இப்போது நாம் பார்ப்பது அல்லது 3 ரக ஹெலிகாப்டர்கள்.
This was the very first flight pass, version 1, National Day flight pass in 1970, August at the City Hall. I was flying the aircraft on the right side. If you had been with me, you would have enjoyed the view and the thrill of being in the aircraft. I could see the Padang soldiers forming up from the corner of my eyes, but I had to watch out the lead aircraft in front so that I do not collide into the aircraft and a mid-air collision on National Day parade. Then the whole world will laugh in Singapore. Your first show, you put up such a spectacular event. Safety first. Concentrate on that. Secondary effort, check that things are okay. Out there. Alright, so that was the first time we came up to the world. And in 1975, that was 1970, 1975, 1st April, the Singapore Air Defence Command, this patch down here of the Flying Eagle, was set up, established as a full-fledged Air Force, the Republic of Singapore Air Force, on 1st July 1975. What day is that? April Fool's Day, correct. And was I also an April Fool? Because on the same day, I was appointed to command the helicopter squadron. Was I a clown? Was I a fool? Whatever it is, I was really dead proud of it. Another milestone, overcoming challenges, and beyond my dream to be a pilot, I was given the task and confided on me to lead the squadron, the first squadron, operational squadron in the Singapore Air Defence Command, right? Air Defence, Singapore Air Force at the time. I led a group of about 12 pilots, technicians behind it, a lot more. We did not take a picture of that one. There's another picture, big group together, and went on to conquer more challenges. One of the big issues we had was to try to be self-sufficient, and we started to build up resilience and self-dependency. We started to train pilots locally with the first helicopter course on the left there. Very good, 2 instructors to 1 student at that time. Then the second course I ran, third course I ran it. And then subsequent more courses were run after I left the squadron to take up senior appointments, staff appointments at headquarters. Secondly, we were deployed at a sudden notice to go to Kuantan, Pahang in 1970, January 1970, to help in the flood relief operation in Malaysia. That time was a very big flood. And Singapore offered helicopters to Malaysia, which they accepted, and we flew 4 helicopters out to Kuantan and stayed there for 11 days, every day ferrying food, supply, evacuating casualties, because the roads were all flooded. The only thing that can move around is some sampans around there. But for a longer distance, sampans couldn't reach them. So we used our latest helicopter, ferry rice, ferry medical supply, and so on. And we had a lot of adventures down there. In one case, I was trapped inside a valley with a cloud descending on me. I was trying to get out. Even the exit down valley was covered in cloud. covered cloud. We couldn't get out. So eventually there was an opening in the cloud, and then I got out quickly and got back home. And also, the best thing, I celebrated my 21st birthday there. I got no party, no birthday cake. Happy birthday to me. My happy birthday was singing in the aircraft, was flying. Happy birthday to me. My 21st birthday. And I flew 5 missions that day. From 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. In between, stop, refuel, makan, pack lunch, eat in the aircraft while flying the mission. And that was the most number of missions I flew in any single day. And I gladly remembered my 21st birthday. Party was in the air. The good thing was we helped a lot of people who needed. So that's how I remember my 21st birthday. Secondly, in 1974, we met the first terrorist action in Singapore. The Laju ferry was hijacked by four armed men at Pulau Bukom, holding 5 hostages. All right? And then after a whole week of negotiations, while our helicopters were standing by in case we had to evacuate casualties that arose from there, we had to ferry any emergency services to bring them around. So we were on standby for that whole, I think it took 1 week for the negotiation to settle, and eventually our Singapore government gave offered a few senior government servants plus the commander of the commando battalion as a guarantor to follow the hijackers in the plane to go to another country. So we saved ourselves through skillful negotiation. Although behind it, we were ready for any violence that may come out. Furthermore, the 1983 cable car accident. How many of you knows about this one? Okay? No. Okay, good. Thank you. I will not go into too much detail, but here, we were ready and trained for all sorts of rescue operations. But no one in Singapore ever dreamt of this black swan event, where a cable car could be entangled by a ship's rig. And at night some more, with 13 casualties hanging down there, dangling precariously anytime they could fall into the sea. So the Air Force was alerted, the Commando Battalion was alerted, and BINDEF, in weighing both options, use helicopters or use commandos to rescue them, decided the best options was to use helicopters. We were not trained for that type of situation, but more importantly is adaptability. We know we were skillful in all sorts of winching operation, rescue operation, over land, over sea, over tall building, and so on. And we convinced BINDEF headquarters that our pilots and air crewmen who operate the rescue winches are able to rescue these passengers, trapped victims, not 100% certainty, but with a good 90% certainty. And if anything happens, then we may have to abort the rescue. So MINDEF took the decision and said, go, helicopters, go and do the task. And we achieved it through the night from about 1 a.m. until 6 a.m. in the morning, after about 3-4 hours of 2 helicopters taking turn to rescue the people. And that drew world attention. Another one, Hotel New World collapse. Now it's a new building, but it was a terrible issue. For a 1 week long plus rescue, our helicopters were standing by at the Farrer Park, ferrying casualties who were rescued straight away to hospital. And Singapore was confident enough to take on a global role, participating in the United Nations events. For example, the UN supervised national election in Cambodia. We deployed our aircraft, of course painted in white color, United Nations colors, to ferry ballot boxes in Cambodia. So that got us a place in the international scene and international diplomacy. Furthermore, in East Timor, which gained independence from Indonesia, after some civil war, there was a negotiated peace. And to maintain the peace, the United Nations deployed a force there from various countries, and Singapore helicopters took part in that peacekeeping mission way back in 2002. And much closer to home, the first tsunami that hit on Christmas, on Boxing Day, 2004 in Aceh. The helicopters were very quickly deployed. In fact, after the tsunami on the next day, Our first helicopters were already out in Aceh after Indonesia accepted our offer of assistance. And eventually, what is important is we have a home base for all the helicopters, and that is Sembawang Air Base. How many of you know where Sembawang Air Base is? Good? Okay. Okay, because you can't see it from the road, it's all concealed, all right? It is just off Khatib, behind Khatib MRT station. Sembawang Air Base is a home base to all the helicopter types we have today. It was set up in 1982 after a long wait of something like 30-40 years after I submitted the original master plan to develop Sembawang Air Base as the home for all helicopters. As a young officer of 9 years of flying experience, I proposed the operational master plan, which Midnight HQ accepted. But because of money issues, you can't get money straight away. The project has to be completed in phases. Now it is almost complete. The helicopter force is also the outcome of my earlier dream to propose what the helicopter force of Singapore should be, foreseeing what type of roles they play, and I proposed the order of battle and structure for the helicopter force. That was also accepted, but because of money again, it has to be implemented phases. So today, our helicopter force, and also before I retire, a few years before I retire, I was honored to be appointed as the Deputy Air Base Commander of Sembawang Air Base, overseeing all those at that time, about nearly 100 helicopters and about 3,000 to 4,000 officers and men of all vocations. It was a heavy responsibility. And at one time, the phone calls or pager, those days used to be people pager, they call back, I got to be back in base within 1 hour, but usually within half an hour back in base, respond to whatever call that came out. So that is the way we develop resilience and future readiness. Very important. So I asked Yoda how to build resilience and future readiness, because I love the Star Wars movie. I remember 1975 when it came out. So he gave me the answer. First, align your mindset with your goal. Okay, so I did it. I aligned my mindset, program my mind, find answer to the gravity question, and to be a warrior. That was my dream. And I did it. This was a mantra that guided me. Mine was a profession of arms, the will to win, the sure knowledge that in war, there is no substitute for victory. That if we lose, our nation will be destroyed. That is the role, the duty of a warrior, to safeguard the nation. I fulfilled that. I fulfilled the top. I fulfilled the second one. And I had a wonderful, memorable career in the Air Force. Secondly, aligning your mindset. In 1975, after the fall of Vietnam, there were many more people who ventured out in the South China Sea. I flew missions to recce them. I saw those lost souls, and I made up my mind that we should not be like them also. So second one, Yoda says, build a resilience through challenges and experience. In the 32 years of service I served in the Air Force, I had lost 20 comrades in flying accidents, 20 pilots, 20 crewmen, and some soldiers in flying accidents involving helicopters. It was a very sad feeling. They are costly to the nation, they are costly to the families, they are costly to their parents. And in my mind, I remember my mother say, flying is dangerous, don't be a pilot, you may get killed. That message was in my mind whenever we face such difficult situation, but we push on. So we learn from lessons from our challenges, from accidents especially, which give very valuable lessons to rectify the future procedures. And finally, Yoda tells me to combine it with adaptability to be ready for the future. So what we did was, one of the big things was in 1995, we deployed a combined Air Force and Army exercise to the Philippines, where we trained with the Philippine Army. In the midst of this was this diplomatic issue. Floor contemplation, a Filipino mate who murdered another Filipino mate in Singapore was due to be hung. And when we were down there, we got instruction to evacuate all the Air Force assets out of Philippine airspace by sunset the next day. Only a 24-hour notice to get everything out. Wow, that was a big task. So we got to adapt very quickly, decide, and work out a plan. And we eventually worked out and got all our aircraft out of Philippine airspace with the help of 3 C-130s that came in to move our stores out, with the help of Fokker 50 overhead that provided communications for the low-flying helicopters that flew out from the Philippines. And by sunset, the next day, all our assets were out of the Filipino airspace. And that was a very tense moment when diplomatic tension was at its height between Philippines and Singapore. So here, it takes not one to support one. Roughly, it takes 113 people to support one pilot in the air. Composition of them, immediately people who go, technicians who rearm the aircraft, refuel the aircraft, check the aircraft. Second line, major servicing the aircraft, air traffic control, rescue, fire rescue, to come and rescue the crew if there's an accident. And then also maintenance mobile, maintenance plus, those who provide the food to us, those who provide transport and security of the air bases. So it takes roughly about 113 men to keep one pilot airborne. And we are very grateful. Those people keep us up in air safely, and also the engineers, that the aircraft doesn't break down while in flight. I experienced 1 or 2 cases where I almost got killed, fell out from the sky. But thanks to my systematic pre-flight instruction and the crew working with the engineers, I survived. So here, in summary, if you see YouTube here, this YouTube says that our helicopter force is Southeast Asia's powerful helicopter force, resilient, ready, rapid. In national defense, military defense, and all sorts of roles were always ready. So here is the ABC guide. ABC. Align your mindset with your goals. Build resilience through challenges and experience. Combine it with adaptability to be future ready. I went beyond my dream. Just to be a pilot, I was a squadron commander. Beyond a squadron commander, I was given the responsibility to command an air base as a deputy air base commander. So I felt that the whole career was very rewarding and a dream that came more true than I ever thought could come true. And I felt Air Force pilot is the best warrior profession there is. And it stretches the body, mind, soul above all fear and beyond limits, if you have the willpower to do it. The mind is a little enemy or a vital ally. Fear and limiting beliefs hold you back. Defeat fear, surmount the limits, and emerge resilient and future ready. And also further beyond my dream, I got into the history book of Singapore. Page 142. Okay, you can see page 142, secondary school history book, published last year or year before. I was featured in the defense section, the last part, built up on the Singapore Armed Forces. I was. It's featured there, from a kampong boy who dreamt small, dreamt big, wanted big, and got into history, being part of history now. So, this kampong boy, he did it. Will you also take up the challenge to rise above your fear and stretch beyond your limits to achieve your dream? Set your dream, achieve it, and finally get it. And may you help me take up a phone and try and record this dream. Then you can follow me and give a feedback on this QR code. Thank you very much. I hope that I have shared my dream with you and leave you something to think about, whether you are rise above all fear and beyond limits to achieve the dream and pursue it relentlessly. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leo, for your wonderful sharing experience. Okay, so can we give one more round of applause for Mr. Leo? Okay, so thank you for your contributions and everything and sharing this wonderful story. Okay, so